And today's talk will be about Hareraiser, which is quite possibly the worst video game ever, which I will now attempt to explain using words and pictures and ethereal concepts and other stuff. I've got no idea how long this talk takes, by the way. I've never done it before, so if we don't get to the end, sorry. If it ends in 5 minutes, we'll have a sing-song, it'll be fine. As they say in the industry, it'll be fine for what it is. Right, so let us begin with an almighty question. When is a video game not a video game? How about when a puzzle uses the medium of video games to impart information? And what if the puzzle itself possibly doesn't exist and the information is meaningless? Right, this is all getting a bit existential, but don't worry, this isn't one of those talks. This is genuinely about possibly the worst game ever released. Now, I've written a couple of books about some of the worst video games ever commercially sold, and for my money, that game, as you may have guessed, is Hareraiser, released for many, and I do mean many, of the 8-bit computer systems popular in the UK at the time being the mid-80s. Now, to understand Hareraiser, we have to go back to... Oh, I forgot that slide. It's pretty, though. Let's look at it for a second. Gold. Right, now to understand Hareraiser, we have to go back to 1976 and the birth of the publishing phenomenon Masquerade. This book. That person's got it, yes! I was going to say, has anybody got it? And I wasn't expecting one, but yeah, here we are.
I got it from my sister.
Yeah. I wasn't alive either. That's a lie. I'd just been born. But I'd literally just been born. So I wasn't going to be finding the golden hair, as you will discover. But yeah, basically an artist called Kit Williams, there he is, looking arty, had been approached by a publisher to produce a book of his paintings. But he wasn't keen on the idea because people just tend to flick through art books without paying attention to them. I mean, you do, don't you? Sort of sit at home and you go, oh, well, that's nice. That's nice. Back on the table. Whereas if you're in an art gallery, it's like, oh yes, symbolism, bold use of colour and shade. Probably because you're trying to look clever in front of other people, but he was quite right that people do just flick through them and not pay attention. So his clever idea was to make a visual puzzle book that would make people look closely at his paintings in order to solve the puzzle, which is a very, very solid idea. So the result was indeed this mighty book, Masquerade. That's the cover. An illustrated storybook that cryptically hid the location of a buried clay casket. And inside that casket was the golden hair, a beautiful 5-inch long pendant made of 18-karat gold and set with rubies and semi-precious stones, made by Williams himself, because he was quite a multi-talented man. Now, the combination of sumptuous art and the possibility of winning an expensive item of jewellery caught the public's imagination, and Masquerade sold 200,000 copies in the first week alone. That's a lot in 1976. It went on to sell well over 1 million worldwide, possibly close to 2 million. It even sold a load in Japan where they couldn't possibly understand it because their system of language works entirely differently. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive in itself. And it entirely launched the concept of the armchair treasure hunt, which is where, you get a book or something and you can solve a puzzle in your house, but then still win a tangible reward. So the book was kind of the fidget spinner of its day. It was very popular. Everybody had it. If you want a copy, they're still on Amazon for like 3 pence or something because it sold so many. The book itself, it consists of words and pictures, as you'd probably guess. And the way it's set up is you've got some text on one side, a picture on the other, and around the pictures are more words and various letters of meaning. And there are no actual instructions as to what to do. But we'll get onto that in a moment. So literally you go through looking at these extremely beautiful paintings and reading the text and going, what's going on here like? So the text of the book tells the story of Jack Hare, who is tasked to carry the golden hair pendant, as we saw earlier, to the sun as a token of the moon's affection. Oh. He, of course, loses it because he's a twit, and it was up to the reader to solve the book's puzzle and find where he's lost it and dig it up for themselves and then keep it. And by keep it, I mean immediately sell it for a large sum of money. As ever, most people spent hours and hours poring over the book and then wrote in a totally incorrect theory that was politely refuted by Mr. Williams. So, the instructions from the back. Firstly, it describes the golden hair, as we did earlier, then says, the precise location of this buried treasure may be discovered within the pages of Masquerade, which are themselves overflowing with riddles and puzzles the reader will delight in unmasking. Only one other person, whose identity is known to the publisher, mysterious, was witness to the secret burial, and as the author tantalizingly reveals, the treasure is as likely to be found by a bright child of 10 with an understanding of language, simple mathematics and astronomy as it is to be found by an Oxford Don. Lies. Seriously, there's no way a 10-year-old child would have found this, as we'll get onto later. Now, who would like to know who the secret person is? It was actually a celebrity, big celebrity, mid-70s and kind of into the early 80s. Does anybody know who was present at the burial? You have one guess between you. Go on. Jimmy Savile. Thank goodness, no. Although, at the time, that's entirely feasible, and... However, they wanted somebody who was known for his intelligence, not Jimmy Savile, and somebody who also, I suppose, could be trusted, so they can say later, look, we had a trustworthy person. And as it turns out, that's very much not Jimmy Savile. It was, wait for it, Bamber Gascoigne. Yes, he used to present University Challenge, which is why it says University Challenge. No, it doesn't. It says University College. I used the wrong picture. Anyway, that is Bamber Gascoigne, bless him. He was a historian and a, TV presenter, really. So he was a known celebrity, but also a very clever man. So the sort of perfect person to get in on this kind of thing. Where are we? In fact, I can show you a picture of him about to set off in Kit's car and bury the casket. Kit there looking very excited, bless him. Right, now here's the thing about Masquerade. As I touched on earlier, the puzzle was not easy to solve. I mean, at all. As you could tell from the instructions earlier, no pointers were given, so people only had the text and the paintings to go on. Bamber Gascoigne had the basis of the puzzle explained to him, and even he couldn't work it out, despite already knowing the location, the answer, because he'd just been there. And if Bamber Gascoigne doesn't know, he was seriously worried that it was too difficult for anyone to solve. And that, when coming from the host of University Challenge, it's going to be pretty hard. The difficulty was compounded by the huge number of false trails and red herrings that Williams weaved into the book. Seriously, there's a lot of things you can spend all day solving, get to the end, and literally the answer is red fish or something along those lines. So for 2.5 years after publication, Kit Williams himself received tens of thousands of letters suggesting solutions, and none of them were right. And I don't just mean they didn't get the answer right, I mean their methodology wasn't even close to how you actually solve it. Nobody was even on the right track. Now, I'm going to give it a quick explanation of how the core of the puzzle works. Right, I'll be using painting 14 here as an example, because it's a twin-page one and fits the 16:9 ratio better. Yeah. Now, the thing to remember is, Kit was an artist and not a writer or a mathematician. As a result, the puzzle is almost entirely visual. Now, the text of the book, the actual story pages about Jack Hare, are totally irrelevant. You may as well just rip them out of the book. Don't do that, because the pictures are on the other side and you'll end up with no pages in the book. But it's totally irrelevant. It's all visual. So you will notice on this mighty picture of a swimming girl here, you've got the writing around the outside. I am hydrogen, 2 of 1 to 8. Of oxygen am I, crystal aquamarine. That in itself, as you probably guessed, means absolutely nothing. 4 of the letters are red. Those are an anagram of frog, and that means absolutely nothing. Every page has this little red herring on. However, there is something more subtle. Some of the letters have little barbs on them. For an example, look at the S in crystal. Tiny little barb on it. If you look at those, there are 5 of them, which spell out the word stone, which is another complete red herring that appears on every page and has nothing to do with anything whatsoever. Now, wait for it. The actual solution involves drawing lines from the character's eyes through their longest visible finger or toe or fin or whatever extremity they have. These then point to certain letters around the outside. Yeah, I know, right? There was a hint that you had to do this. He didn't just expect you to come with this off the top of his head, but it was pretty darn cryptic. When read in the right orders, the letters spell out light of equinox, which obviously means light of equinox, but he's had to miss out the I for practical reasons to do with the painting, I would imagine. Now, most people had attempted to decode the text or use maths, but the key was the observation and deduction shown there. So the complete answer to the puzzle spells out: Catherine's long finger overshadows earth, buried yellow amulet, midday points the hour, in light of equinox look you. And there's a little bit more to it, because if you take the first letter of each word there, it spells... But that can be quite easily interpreted as close by Amped Hill. Just added a few letters in it. And that confirms the location, because the hare was buried in Amped Hill Park in Bedfordshire. And to find the spot, you had to dig where the shadow of the longest part of a monument, called St. Catherine's Cross, hence Catherine's long finger, falls at noon on the day of an equinox, of which there are 2 a year. Now, if you actually had that, yeah, I think most people would have worked it out, but of course nobody came particularly close. Or did they? Blimey, that Kit Williams, eh? Here he is, looking devious with a rabbit. Hang on, no, that's St. Catherine's Cross. There it is real. I'm glad I added that in the last minute and forgot. Beautiful. Anyway, here's Kit Williams looking devious with a rabbit. Now, when I saw that picture, I thought, I've got to do a talk around this just to use that picture. It's fantastic. So yeah, he couldn't get a hair. That's the disappointing thing. The ears would be longer. Anyway, as you can imagine, most people never got close to working it out and instead got obsessed with their own weird theories. Somebody, this person wrote to both Williams and Bamber Gascoigne, who didn't know the answer himself. And he was convinced that the whole thing was a front, and that the puzzle was actually designed by the famous crime novelist Agatha Christie, who had died in January of that year, and this was like some kind of final mystery, last gasp of excitement from her. There is nothing in the book which even vaguely points you towards Agatha Christie in any way, shape or form, bless him. I don't know how he worked that out, but yeah, I'd like to see his tax returns. Right, finally, on the 19th of February, 1982... that's 6 years later, Kit Williams received the very first letter correctly identifying the location of the hare. But there's always a downside, isn't there? The writer, Ken Thomas, had not understood the puzzle and had got there mostly by luck. Right, the really heartbreaking thing is that a pair of physics teachers had actually solved the puzzle fully and dug in almost the right place. They hadn't written to him first like most people, they'd actually dug straight in, and they'd somehow missed the casket. So as you can imagine, the physics teachers were completely gutted. But while they may not have ended up with the golden hare, they were the only people to actually solve the puzzle properly. Although sadly that accolade is not made of gold and set with gems, and you can't sell it for several £1,000s. Anyway, after the hare was found, Ken Thomas did the publicity rounds. Here he is with Kit and the book's publisher. Now, you may notice something about Ken there. He's the one in the hat, turning his face away from the camera, with a false moustache and a sort of weird pipe, so he's got his hand in front of his face. I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, Ken Thomas was not keen on publicity, to say the least. He genuinely went there under a heavy disguise, and it took like a week from him actually submitting the answer and speaking to Williams on the phone to actually doing anything about it. He was very, very publicity shy. In fact, if you look closely, you can actually see the false moustache. There. It looks like he cut it off a bit of carpet or something. Astonishing. So the answer to the puzzle was published, and as with every game of this type, people wrote to Williams claiming that his solution was wrong and stupid and that their patently incorrect idea was the real truth. I mean, I know you entirely came up with this, but you're wrong. I haven't wasted my time, honest. Oh, dearie me. Bamber Gascoigne actually went on to write an entire book about the whole affair called The Quest for the Golden Hare, and in it he says that people are good at forming patterns and are good at self-deception, which if you've ever run any sort of competition, you will know that's pretty accurate. So, Ken Thomas now had possession of the mighty Golden Hare and decided to capitalise on it by creating another puzzle offering it or £30,000 in cash as a prize. And bear in mind, at the time, it wasn't thought to be worth that much, so he was kind of overstating its value a bit, or so people thought. But this time, it would be in the form of a computer game rather than a book. Now we get relevant. He used the hair as collateral and set up Hairsoft. Yep, his entire business model based around owning a bit of jewellery. Who released Hareraiser Prelude in 1984 for all the major home computers of the time. The Acorn Electron, the Amstrad CPC, the BBC Micro, the Commodore 64, the Commodore VIC-20, the Dragon 32, the MSX, the Auric Atmos, and the ZX Spectrum. Seriously, blanket release on everything that existed at the time. It was even advertised for the Tandy TRS-80 and the Atari 8-bit systems, which were barely even released at the time, but I couldn't find any evidence that it was actually, physically produced for it. Let's have a quick look at the tape. There, it looks the same as the picture, doesn't it? But an interesting thing is, it comes with its own code and a thing to go off and send off if you've, I've got the answer, look, I have to register my copy. You actually had to send the whole tape in to prove that you had bought it. He certainly didn't want people winning it who were, borrowing somebody else's copy or something like that. So, Hareraiser Prelude was really heavily advertised in all the major computer magazines of the time. Let's have a look at the advert there. Hareraiser challenges you! Golden 30,000 prize! I presume they meant £30,000, not like 30,000 ants or something. It's not an arcade game. It's not a boring adventure trek. It's a genuine puzzle that could be solved by you. Hareraiser, the unique computer treasure hunt, a computer puzzle of graphics and text in 2 parts. Each part contains vital clues to places or locations which will enable you to discover the whereabouts of this golden treasure. It has not been buried, you just have to pinpoint its location to claim this amazing prize. This puzzle. Little note here, guys, if you're running a company that involves entirely making of puzzles, spell the word puzzle correctly. Anyway, it's been specifically designed to break away from individual arcade and adventure type games and provide family involvement. If you don't have a baby with you, the game doesn't work. A competition for all the family. It uses the word family more than that last trailer for The Fast and the Furious. A competition for all the family. Once you've collected all the clues, you can work on it anywhere, individually or in groups. You could solve this. Part 1 prelude, blah, 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 part 2 finale, ready for Christmas. Now that's weird. There's various talk of a part 2, but we'll get onto that later. Anyway, 2 interesting things to pick up from this is, number 1, the price, which is absolutely ridiculous for the time. £8.95 at a time when even the most advanced games were £7.95. So it's like the cultural equivalent of like £55 now. But of course, no other game offered the chance to win the golden hair, which was not only, a very expensive thing, but quite a famous thing in itself because of Masquerade, although I'm sure people would have just taken the £30,000 in cash. Also notice it says, once you've collected all the clues, you can work on it anywhere. So this isn't really a game as such, it's more a clue delivery system. And in fact, the clues could have been put in another format, like, for instance, a book or something? Yeah. Well, I suspect, obviously, the only reason it was a computer game was because at the time you could sell those for much more money than a book, and the cost of tape duplication was a lot lower than the cost of printing. So, what did you get for your £8.95, right? Well, we need to find that out. We must now play, very briefly, and you'll see why, Hareraiser Prelude. Warning, this involves fiddling around with an emulator that doesn't like going full screen, so fires may ensue. No, not yet. Away with you. There we are. Right. Now, there are only 4 controls, up, down, left, right, or possibly north, south, east, west. You can't tell because of a complete lack of any kind of feedback. Right, open the last game I was playing. I really hope I was playing Hareraiser. Oh, I told you I didn't like going full screen. Oh, no, what? Hey, we got there. Now, there's a feature on a laptop called mute. It is a good feature. You are my sunshine. No, you ain't, mate. Right. Hairsoft Limited. Wow, this is hard to read. A hair of gold and jewels was hid. It lay beneath the ground. A seeker solved the riddled clues, and the beautiful treasure was found. The hair again a new owner seeks, one who will make history. So good luck with your quest, for the hair is at rest. And I've altered the rhyme scheme halfway through. To awake when you find the key. Though no hounds will you need. Who would have thought you'd need a dog to solve this? Nor even a steed. Oh, I did think you need a horse, so I can understand that. To find this hidden prize, no spade or pick or computer trick. Just a pencil, paper, and eyes. And probably a hand to write them down with as well. And probably some sort of arm to connect the hands to the body. And, you need like a nervous system. But anyway, suffice to say, why won't the game start? Here we are. Right. So, there are no instructions whatsoever. I mean, literally, Hareraiser, Masquerade, the book, had very, very little. This has nothing. So you start it up, and you end in a slightly random screen with a load of purple trees, a yellow tree, a cloud, the sun, and the saying, the grass is like a carpet. Okay. Shall we go up, down, left, or right? Down. We heard down. Oh, we can't go down. No. Because, of course, most of the controls don't work in most of the screens because, hey, why would they? Let's go up instead. No, that doesn't work. Let's go right. No, I think we're going left. No, none of them are working, right? Let's try the spectrum cursor keys. There we are. There's the hair. It turns into a sock puppet and disappears. The sun shines up. Kind of shines in all directions, to my knowledge, but 2 clouds, a sun, 4 purple trees, a yellow tree. Let's go somewhere else. The count has begun. Good. Let's go somewhere else. Help is here. Now that's what we call a lie, because there's nothing here whatsoever. Search from coast to coast. So you're getting the idea yet? The answer is probably no, because there's nothing really here. Oh God, the hair's back. And this Spectrum version is so far technically advanced as compared to the others, you wouldn't believe. I'll show you later. Shall you find it? I'll give you a hint. Begins with N, 2 letters. Second letter's no, O. Yeah, this is all there is. It's just a load of screens with some stuff on, maybe. Does it matter where the trees are? Does it matter how many trees there are? Does it matter where the clouds are? Does it matter if the hair is there or not? What do the words mean? Well, nobody really knows. Something I should mention, actually, is that all the screens are the same on each different version of the game. So it's not like you've got a different one, there's a different answer. That was at least consistent across them, as you would expect from a overarching puzzle. But, I've crashed it. That's good. Let's go try to get into the source code. Nobody must know the secrets of the Hareraiser, mainly because it fits in about 8K, and you've just paid £9 for it. Right, let's get this thing back up. There we go. Oh no, let's go back to this one. I like that one. Right, so nobody really knows anything about this whatsoever. And in fact, nobody ever did, except Ken Thomas himself, because the puzzle was never solved. And not just never solved, nobody ever even had a clue how to do it. There are no details or images to be studied and chewed over like in Masquerade the book. With Hareraiser Prelude, all you got for your £8.95 is confused. But now, we come on to the real joy. Do you remember, right, the mention of Hareraiser Finale and Part 2 and this kind of stuff? Well, that, incredibly, is the other half of the puzzle that you had to buy separately. Dun, 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 dun. Hairsoft released Hareraiser Finale in late 1984. It cost another £8.95 and was apparently necessary if you wanted to actually find the location of the golden hair. So that's effectively an eye-watering £17.90 in total, which is what, like £110 in modern gaming terms, just to enter the contest. By comparison, the Masquerade book, full of beautiful art, is £3.50. They were sold a few years prior, and all you get here is a couple of tapes. So as you'd expect, Finale is extremely rare. Even I couldn't get hold of a copy because Prelude did not sell well, despite all the advertising, and the few people who did pay for it were not keen on giving Haresoft more of their money. In fact, it was only released in any serious capacity for the Spectrum, and most computers didn't even get the second part. Now, Finale itself, as I imagine you've already guessed, is just another small set of crappy screens and text. The only major differences are that the title music has changed to Scarborough Fair, and yes, it's still that beepy, and for some reason, a lot of the screens are now full of spiders. I don't know what relevance that has. I like to think they sat in a warehouse and the spiders just crawled their way into the game's code, but yeah. They're really badly drawn spiders as well. I thought they were ants until, one of them came down in a thread. So, now there is obviously no technical reason whatsoever for Hareraiser being released in two halves. The game code, as I said, is tiny. It's like less than 8K, which means that both releases could fit simultaneously into the memory of even the 16K Oric 1, which was like the lowest memory computer at the time. Haresoft themselves, when asked, why the flipping heck are you charging us twice for one thing, their response was, to make it fun and enable competitors of all ages to participate. Non sequitur of all time there. I mean, perhaps the greatest puzzle is actually how paying twice as much is more fun, or how making something insanely expensive opens it up to a wider age demographic. I think they quite wanted money. Anyway, the magazines of the time were generally unimpressed with Hareraiser Prelude, viewing it as an expensive cash grab, because, they had their heads screwed on. If you were just supposed to note down what's on the screen, then, why did it even have to be a video game at all? When Finale was released, they ignored it entirely. Literally no magazine would even touch it, editorial-wise. And there was considerable backlash from people who purchased Prelude. The adventure column of Popular Computing Weekly was full of letters from angry people saying, I've bought this and I don't know what it is. There isn't a clue. Is it a puzzle? Have I gone mad? Help me, everybody. And of course, other people just wrote back saying, we bought it as well and we feel exactly the same. There was only one letter with anything positive to say about it. And it's this one. Dear Tony, after reading about Hareraiser in PCW, I wonder who these nerds are who think this isn't any good. I am one of a group of 6 who have had immense fun from seeking clues on this treasure hunt, and furthermore, it's not meant to be like the book Masquerade. If one seeks to win the golden hare, the computer gives the clues, the rest is down to you. That is, if you're intelligent enough. Yours, Mrs. J.Y. Widowson. Hands up if you believe that was actually written by a J.Y. Widowson. Hands up if you think that was a sock puppet from Haresoft. Yeah, we have no definite proof, but again, PCW magazine weren't that convinced themselves and actually refused to print anything more on the subject after that. Now, Haresoft did give one extra clue, or they claimed to give one extra clue, to the puzzle, which, isn't actually part of the software. They issued a press release saying that Annika Rice, the co-presenter of the television show Treasure Hunt at the time, had given a clue of some kind during an appearance at Harrods department store in London. And the event wasn't recorded, so it was of no use to puzzle solvers unless they happened to be in Harrods at the time. Oh, look, there's Annika Rice. Oh, she's given a clue. Hooray. That didn't happen. So, absolutely no use whatsoever. And there's also no proof as a result that Rice said anything relevant to Hareraiser at all. It's all getting a little bit dodgy, shall we say. I really hope to meet Annika Rice and ask her, did somebody slip you £10 to give a clue, or have you never heard of this thing whatsoever? I think I know the answer, but I'd like confirmation. Now, predictably, Haresoft went belly up early in 1985. The company was declared bankrupt, and in December 1988, the golden hare was auctioned off by the liquidators at Sotheby's. Now, you remember Ken Thomas thought it was worth around £30,000, right? Sotheby's valued it at somewhere between £3,000 and £6,000. But this time, Mr. Thomas was absolutely correct, because it sold for £31,900 to an anonymous buyer, and then it just disappeared from view. Nobody knew who bought it, and it was gone. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely it's unfair to say that Hareraiser Prelude and Finale are terrible games because they're merely part of a puzzle. And I would have to be saying that the entire puzzle is terrible for it to count. Well, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. In fact, I'm going to do it now. The whole puzzle is terrible. There we are. That's got rid of any worry about that. And I shall now attempt to show why I think that using information and reasoning, just the way they don't in political discourse anymore. So, as a backdrop to this piece, I shall be showing the title screen from the Acorn Electron version of Hareraiser. I call it Migraine Nightmare. I don't know if you've ever been really feverish and woken up in the middle of the night and you're half asleep and you can sort of see colours because you're in so much pain. That's what that is. Right. So, let's go back to Ken Thomas, the chap who won the Golden Hare and started Hairsoft and had a bit of carpet on his lip pretending it was a moustache like one of Baldrick's ruses from Blackadder. Right. It transpires that he has something in common with Sherlock Holmes. And it's not that they're both great detectives, it's that they're both fictional. Ken Thomas does not exist and has, of course, never existed. It was a pseudonym of a man called Dougald Thompson, and hence all the disguised nonsense when the casket was dug up and then not wanting any publicity and taking a long time to get back because he was trying to plan how to not show his real name. Now, Dougald Thompson was the business partner of another man called John Gard. And John Gard lived with a lady called Veronica Robertson, who was Kit Williams' girlfriend at the time he thought up the masquerade puzzle. Can you see where this is going? According to a 1988 article from the London Times, she didn't know the precise location, but was sure it had been buried at Ampthill. Correctly, of course. Thompson then arranged 7 separate metal detector searches in the hopes of finding it. No success, because it's actually quite a small amount of metal. It's in a clay casket, it's underground. Kit Williams had thought of that. And of course, the reason Thompson's answer was so incomplete is because they had effectively cheated. It seems that Veronica Robertson had been manipulated into giving up what she knew by promises that the hair would be sold and the money given to animal rights groups, because she wasn't particularly interested in money, but she was quite pro-animal rights. As we know, of course, the money was actually used as collateral to set up Hairsoft, so no winners there. Now, when approached about this duplicity, John Gard, Dougald's business partner, denied knowing Thompson at all, until he was shown company documents featuring both their names. Then he changed his story entirely and he said, no, I never went looking for the golden hair, no. So then they showed him a newspaper clipping of him telling the newspaper that he was searching for the hair, he knew where the hair was, and he would be the one to find it. He had also offered the metal detector experts they'd got in an awful lot of money to publicly claim that they found the hair if they did find it, which they declined, incidentally. The whole affair was a mass of lies and deception, and Kit Williams himself admitted that he had been conned. Here he is, looking sad. Now, the real sting in the tail is for some physics teachers that I mentioned earlier. Remember them? Led by Mike Barker. Here they are. Now, you remember that they were the only ones to properly solve the puzzle. Well, turns out that they had been digging the day before Dougald Thompson went out on one of his searches, and he spotted the earth they had dug up and thought, hang on, that can't be coincidental. So then he wrote to Kit Williams with that location. And by that amount of time that had gone, Kit just thought, oh my goodness, thank the Lord somebody has found it. This will do, this will do. I don't care if the answer's incomplete. Turns out he should have cared. And worse still, the casket was found in a pile of previously turned over earth, meaning that they had either A, somehow dug it up and missed it, or B, Kit and Bamber had buried it in slightly the wrong place. We don't know which one of those two options is true, but it's an outcome nearly as bad as their haircuts. So, back to Hareraiser itself. For the background here, I shall be using different versions of the hair from different versions of the game. ZX Spectrum on the left, of course. Then you've got a kind of alien chicken from the Commodore 64 version. I like the way it's not yellow. The golden hair, yeah, we're going to do it grey. Then there's a robot dog, maybe, don't know, Chinese dragon. And I'm not sure what the last one is. I'm guessing some kind of cup holder. No idea. Anyway. So, what can we make of Hareraiser? Well, the common belief, which I personally share, is that the Hareraiser puzzle is either meaningless or the method of obtaining the answer is so willfully obscure as to make it effectively impossible. That way, there need never be a winner at all. I mean, remember that Hairsoft's entire business model revolved around owning the golden hair, so they wouldn't be too keen on giving it up. But in the event of a legal challenge, they could claim some arbitrary answer is correct and it exists, and hey, we're all above board, honest guys. I mean, if this is true, then the whole Hareraiser puzzle effectively has no solution and is indeed monumentally terrible. I mean, of course, it's also possible the puzzle is just extremely difficult or badly designed, but I think given the background of dishonesty from the company's founder, it's difficult not to assume there was some deceit present in the project somewhere, to say the least. But whatever the truth, it is tragic that a puzzle as beautifully constructed and presented as Masquerade led to the creation of something as grasping and empty as Hareraiser. For £17.90, you got a few lines of basic code, where a few years previously you could pay far less for a book full of beautiful art. But what happened to the golden hair itself? Well, it transpires that the anonymous purchaser lives in Egypt and still owns the pendant to this day. Apparently they wear it for Christmas dinner every year. I don't know why. They kindly allowed it to be sent back to England for the 30th anniversary of Masquerade's publishing, where it was reunited with Kit Williams. There he is, looking happy, along with old Bamber Gascoigne there. It was also displayed at the Victoria and Albert Museum in 2012 as part of a retrospective on British design. So while Hareraiser may have been a huge bust, the golden hair itself does live on. So, in these days of dubious pre-order bonuses and parts of games being held back for DLC, do take some solace in the fact that you are at least getting a game and not receiving, well, for want of a better description, some random bunch of tree pictures as part of an iffy get-rich-quick scam from a bunch of cheaters. And that is why I think that Hareraiser is the worst game ever. The end.